So it sounds like there's a lot of, there's been a lot of tangible benefits for you having, kind of trial by fire, pushing yourself. Um, how is like being in this industry shaped your understanding of like sex and romance?
Oh, it's interesting because it's shaped it for good and for bad, I would say.
Sure.
Um, if we were going to go might as well go sort of negative first, right? Um, I think I think this is also just true whether you were in porn or not. I think if you see enough of society, especially if you see more negative, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You the shine gets taken off it a little bit. And so what I
Sure.
mean by that, it's and I'm not one of those like red pill guys that's like, oh, all women are this or whatever, but I've seen a lot, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you can see how good they can be on one hand, and then you do see, the negative aspects because I've seen, probably some of the worst aspects where women could go to, right? So you do see all of it. So it's I think love changes from, you're in high school and it's like it's all kumbaya and white picket fence and especially as guys, I think I'd love your opinion on this, but I think guys are the real romantics actually. I think,
Huh.
more so than women at the end of the day because we tend to I think as guys we tend to idealize a little bit more until we're
Yeah.
slapped with like, well, here's reality. Because I mean, even if you look at divorce statistics, right? It's like 85% of divorces are initiated by women.
Yeah.
So those are guys that are, like they're happy with their choice or at least happy enough, right? Like they're still kind of idealizing the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the women are like, nah, he, he's not handling it anymore. I'm out, right? I'm
Yeah.
taking half.
Is there any other negatives?
Well, I would say like, and it's not even a negative. I think it's just neutral. But when you open Pandora's box, the benefit of it is you will start to fundamentally understand what you like
Hmm.
from a women's perspective, from sexuality. Like you're really going to know you,
Yeah.
and the negative is you're really going to know you, right? it's
Yeah.
it's both sides. I was commenting to somebody about where the one thing about ignorance is bliss is that it is, right? Like it's like, if so I always tell clients and men that I work with, I'm like, okay, either don't go down the rabbit hole at all or go down far enough that you get the learnings you're seeking. And so what I mean by that, it's like, okay, well, like let's picture scenario one where you give the guy, meets the high school sweetheart, gets married, never has sex with anybody else, has kids, end of story, right?
Mm-hmm.
From their perspective, it's the best sex ever. There is absolutely nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
You take two
Yeah.
virgins, there's no comparison. So we have no comparison. So therefore, it's fundamentally as awesome as we could ever believe it could be because there's nothing else to go by,
Yeah.
right? But as soon as you've slept with one other person, well, now we have the first comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think where a lot of people mess it up is, okay, well, so they sleep with 5 people, 10 people. It doesn't matter, but they have this finite enough sample size that they don't really know yet what they like, and they still want to sort of figure it out, and therefore they get into a relationship, but now they're looking, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm with Sally, but oh man, Anne looks really good, and then they're like, oh, what about Tammy? And it's like they don't really, they're not they don't feel good about their choice because they're not sure that that's the best out there,
Yeah.
or they're
Yeah.
not sure that it's the best they can do, or that maybe something's better, like because they haven't sampled enough, they haven't had enough comparisons where they can say, okay, you know what, now I firmly believe, having sampled enough, that where I'm at now is a good choice, and then I can
Yeah.
stand in that choice and say, you know what, this works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I, dude. So I spent 2 years traveling the country. I had my last business. I exited, bought an RV and just traveled the country for 2 years. Took some time off. I never really had that period, a lot of people have in college or whatever, or their early 20s, they just kind of like, do whatever, take some time off, do what I never really had that. So I kind of just needed that to find myself. I kind of jumped in at like, I was always freelancing and doing things, but then in my early 20s, like I started an agency and it just grew. And then we had, like 12, team of like 12, and I'm like 22, 23. It's just like, I didn't know who the fuck I was, so I took some time off and I did traveling, and I would talk with so many people. And I spent a lot of time, going to the small little rural towns. I grew up in kind of the outskirts of in Dayton, Ohio, but on the rural side. So, I know how to talk to those people and I enjoy those people. And God damn, dude, that was such a prevalent thing, high school sweethearts and whatever. And you'd hear them talk like you're just talking at a bar, and people would be like, "Hey, I never seen you before." They come up and start talking to you, small town. And you get into it and they're just like, "Yeah, I don't know, this and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, have you ever been with anybody else?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Dude, if you did, you would see your relationship in a different lens, and you would very quickly realize how toxic it is and how you're not happy, you know. But then they just give you every fucking excuse why they're not going to do that, and it's just like, I don't know, that's all very strange to me. Um, I kind of jokingly say I tendered across America. Like, I was just like a lot, and I had met up with quite a lot of people and had quite a lot of sex, and probably rookie numbers compared to you, but at least over 100 or so, and it taught me a lot. It's not just like, to me, I used sex as a means of getting to know people quicker. Because again, aromantic, like I don't
Hmm.
really, to me, like I've actually been realizing lately that I'm somewhat on the asexual spectrum. And like I don't have that natural, like I gotta have sex all the time. Like it's just, that's not a natural thing for me. I enjoy sex, but it's not really something that I like strongly desire a lot. But I had a lot of it when I was traveling, and lately I've been considering that and thinking about, what is that? Why is it that I'm kind of vaguely asexual, but I've had a lot of sex with a lot of different people? And for me, it's like, I realize for me, I everybody has a superpower, and mine is like reading people and getting to know people. And for me, and I'm super curious to get your perspective on this, but for me, sex has always been a way of removing a lot of exterior layers very, very quickly. And like when you have sex with somebody, that just that emotional vulnerability it's just the quickest way to get somebody to open up to you and to be more raw and to feel comfortable with you. And when I was on the road, it's like I was just trying to get to know people as quickly as possible, and I was trying to form that connection. I was also really fucking lonely, you
Hmm.
know? And so I kind of desired that emotional intimacy, not really in a romantic way, but just on a human level. And so I had a lot of sex, and it was just really interesting to see how few people, like, so often people will be like, "Yeah, I just got out of a long-term relationship," and you're like the second or third person I've slept with, and I'm like, "Whoa." Like, that's just fascinating. And like, in like how people's perceptions of, it's the old fucking cliche, like all they've done is missionary, and like they've never had an orgasm or anything like that. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of a sad existence. But I completely agree with you, because it's like, yeah, you kind of either need to not know what you don't know, or you have to explore everything. But that in between is kind of torture in a way, because you're always wondering, what if? I don't wonder what if.
Yeah.
I've dated and had sex and met with so many fucking women, that I have a very good idea what I want and what I don't want. And when I met my fiance, I'm just like, oh shit, okay, this is different. This is very, very different. And that has never wavered. That's actually only gotten stronger. And it's actually interesting being a polyamorous person and being able to actively split test that in my current relationship and be like, oh, okay, this really is as special as I think it is. Because I'm still meeting other people, which are great and they're awesome people, and I enjoy being around them. And it doesn't mean that there's necessarily like a pedestal or a hierarchy, or I mean, I guess there is in a way, because we're saying, hey, we're living together, we're getting married, have a house together, all these other things.
Yeah.
Um,
There's always a
but
little bit of a hierarchy.
for sure, yeah, and but it's not that one person is less important necessarily than the other on an emotional way, uh, but the point is just like that gives you like even actively being able to split test it now in a committed relationship is really interesting. But if you're somebody who, like you said, high school sweethearts, never had sex with anybody else, never dated anyone else, it's like you don't know what you don't know, and that is hell to me. Like
Well, and
that
that's the
is
thing.
hell to
Like
me.
for if we've experienced other things, we look at it from hell. But for the people that never have, for some of them, it's heaven. So
Yeah,
that's why
yeah,
I don't necessarily judge it. I just say, look, either you got to pick one or the other, because to sit in that middle zone of kind of mediocrity, that's where you're going to be pulling your hair out. Where you're like,
yeah,
well, I've tried a couple things and now I don't really know what I like and I'm confused. And now every person you get with, you're like, well, is this really the one? Or like you're in your head too much. And so that's why I
yeah,
say, well, if you're going to do that, go down the rabbit hole enough that you can really say, okay, like you said, like this is what I like, this is what I'm about, and now, whether I want to, like you have a polyamorous relationship or I want to have a monogamous relationship, at least I can choose something and kind of
yeah,
stick with it rather than
yeah,
just floating out there forever being like, well, I don't know, because
yeah,
that's where you'll end up.
yeah, for sure. So I want to kind of circle back to this at one point, but was there any other kind of negatives that being in that industry and just living that lifestyle has kind of um, changed your worldview or made you aware of?
Hmm. I would say, the negatives would be really just, understanding women on the level of what they're capable of. Um, and I don't even think that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, it does change the way you operate in the world. And then I would say just, really understanding, well, what it is that you like, because,
Yeah,
when you do that, it is that Pandora's box, because on one hand, well, it's awesome that but then also, well, now you're confronted with the fact that once you really find what you like, now you're seeking that.
mm,
And it may not really be in everybody,
yeah,
especially when you really like the more granular you get with what you like, you'll find the less that you can find it, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that's
yeah,
where I talk about it in the book. I mean, even when we get into the four different types of pussies, and I would talk to guys, and they're like, "Wait, what?" Because
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
conceptually, well, first of all, either they've used condoms their entire life, which I'm not against, but you would never find out any of this information going through that. And then, well, if you're going to come across the types that are at the extremes, well, then you have to have gone through a lot of ladies to really discover that these are the furthest extremes of those types. And then if you do get there, then you might say, oh, wow, like I experienced this and just the sex was awesome. Like without anything that she did, just from a biological perspective.
hmm,
And then, well, okay, how many of those are around? And then let's
yeah,
layer on top of that, how many of those are around that you get along with emotionally? And then how many of those are around that you get along with emotionally that you find attractive? And then how many of
mm,
those that you get along with emotionally that you find attractive that are intelligent? Like it can really come down more to unicorn status. Whereas if you don't have any of this information, you're just like, hey, she's cute, let's get married, right? Like it's way simpler, right? Like, hey, she's
yeah, yeah.
cute. Her name is Sue. Let's get married.
That'll do. It's
Yeah,
like
that'll do.
you're going to the store and you're like, I need a pair of slippers. Ah, okay, those look comfy. All right, that'll do. It's like it's
Exactly.
I don't know. But there's also on the flip side though, there is kind of a scarcity bias that people have. Because like even if you go down that list, like okay, that's rare. Maybe like 1% of 1% of 1%, but then you extrapolate that to 7, 8 billion people. It's like there's a lot of those people out there.